Game week 5 was not the best, but game week 6, I have activated a chip. Let's get straight into it. So let's start with the defense and keeper situation. And I feel like game week 5 was a complete opposite to game week 4 in terms of there weren't that many high scoring defenders this week. Obviously, there was only 2 clean sheets, and that was in the Bournemouth-Newcastle game. If you own Nico Williams, which I know some of you do, you would have loved it. He's 10-point getting a goal in 2 minutes. But let's get straight into it, my team. Sells over Dubravka. Obviously, Dubravka got 1 extra point. I still stand by the decision starting Sells. If you looked at the data from the game, Nottingham Forest still conceded less XG than Burnley. Obviously, Dubravka picked up 7 saves, getting him 2 extra save points, which is obviously nice if you're on a bench. If you were on a bench boost this week, so listen, there's not much in it. 1 point. I still stand by my decision to start Sells. Porro. Listen, 1 point against Brighton. We know Brighton are a very tough side going forward, especially with the form that Minte's in. It was going to be a tough game for, let's say, Tottenham. Also, Tottenham defensively, if you're looking at their expected goals conceded, I think they're actually ranked, let's say, around 8th, I think it is. So they're a mid-table defense, even though, let's say, the clean sheets, they picked up quite a few so far at the start of the season. Also, the frustrating thing was, Xavi Simons didn't start. Pedro Porro had corners, and still Pedro Porro couldn't get an attacking return. But that was only for the first 60 minutes of the game before Xavi Simons came on. Cucurella, 0-pointer. Listen, I'll be honest, when I was watching that game, I thought Cucurella had a chance of getting sent off. I feel like after that red card that Chelsea got earlier on with Sanchez, Chelsea were really, really routed, especially when it was 11v10. I thought Cucurella made a couple fouls. I think there was one on the Wemmer where I was like, oh, hey, Cucurella, calm down. Listen, I'm not trying to get another red card, especially not owning Sanchez. I was like, okay, now there's a potential chance that Cucurella might get 1 or 2 points, and that would have outscored, let's say, Sanchez by 5 points. But listen, that weren't the case. 0-pointer. Listen, I think that game was a lot, let's say, game state dependent. Getting that red card early really ruined the flow of how we expected Chelsea to set up. Even though the first 4 minutes before the red card, United were definitely the better side. Also, I would say this, it was frustrating, especially because, as I said, when Reece James does play at right back, Cucurella gets more license to attack the box, getting himself into better attacking positions. Obviously, as soon as the red card happened, Enzo Maresca made a couple changes. They went to a back five. They made, let's say, quite a drastic change in terms of this setup after the red card, which, listen, you expect after they get a man sent off so early. So it kind of did ruin the flow of the game, and it was frustrating from an FPL point of view. But Richards, as I said, I expected probably, he was probably the defender that had the best chance of a clean sheet going into this week for me. But, as I said, defenders with DEFCON potential just raise your floor of your team. So, listen, Palace conceded. I think it was a Jarrod Bowen goal, Juve assist, which, listen, well done to anyone that has those two. But listen, Chris Richards smashed it for DEFCON this week. And it was good because Lacroix, who a lot of people own, didn't get DEFCON. Munoz, who a lot of people own, didn't get DEFCON. So if you own the Palace defender, Chris Richards was the best option this week. And as I said, Palace are a very, very good side. Now, 17 games unbeaten. They're a phenomenal team. But let's get onto the midfield, because defensively, there's nothing to talk about. It was a shambles this week for FPL. Now, let's get onto the midfield. And as I keep saying, Elliot Anderson is a DEFCON cheat code. In terms of this week, he had 126 touches of the ball. So you would expect Nottingham Forest, when they have so much of the ball, when teams have so much of the ball, the chances of DEFCON decreases. But that weren't the case. He still hit it, even though Nottingham Forest dominated the ball like that. So that is crazy. Listen, 4 points, I'm happy with. That's technically what I expected. And that's what I expect every week owning Elliot Anderson. Let's go with Mo Salah next. Captain, got an assist early on. And I felt like Liverpool's attacking dynamics were a lot better at the start of the game. Or let's say the first 20 minutes were really all over Everton. And I feel like, listen, Salah benefits a lot having, let's say, a natural right back in Conor Bradley. Also, Florian Wirtz didn't play. Szoboszlai was there. And I feel like Szoboszlai in the 10 row really helps, let's say, Liverpool defensively and Salah defensively. In terms of Szoboszlai is the absolute engine. So that obviously helps, let's say, Salah more in the final third in terms of he's going to be working a lot harder for Mo Salah, if that makes sense. And I've also said this, Wirtz favours the left channel. Like, you can see it from his heat map in Leverkusen. You can see it from, if you've watched Liverpool's game so far this year. And I felt like, listen, Szoboszlai favours the right channel a bit more, which is why it helps Mo Salah a bit more in terms of an FPL point of view. And I felt like Liverpool, especially for the first 20 minutes before Everton grew into the game, were really, they proved why they are the best side in the Premier League. But listen, just 1 assist, slightly frustrating. But considering the way the second half went, especially from an Everton point of view, I didn't really expect much more. Because Everton are a very tough side. Merseyside derby, 12:30 kickoff. What can you do? And to be honest, they weren't really, let's say, any major captaincy hauls, if that makes sense, this week. So a 5-pointer for Salah. Can't really complain more. Gakpo. As I said on my previous video, I think owning Gakpo, the points haven't reflected, let's say, his performance in terms of, again, a 60th minute sub. Luckily, he was a 60th minute sub, so he got that 1 extra point for hitting that marker. But listen, he doesn't really, let's say, affect games for Liverpool how you want it to from an FPL point of view. I think a benching for Gakpo potentially could be coming very soon. Especially now that Isak's back, Ekatike can obviously play on the left, even though Arnie Slot hasn't really mentioned that. I think more interestingly, we have seen Wirtz a couple of games now coming on that left-hand side. So could that be something that Slot tries? Wirtz on the left, Szoboszlai in the 10, with Connor Bradley or Frimpong at right back? Potentially. So that's why I am a bit concerned for Gakpo's minutes going forward. But only time will tell. Obviously, next week, the fixture against Crystal Palace is very tough. Ndiaye, brilliant. Listen, I'm lucky because I benched, let's say, Ndiaye this week for Murillo. With Murillo, I knew he was either going to start or he was not going to come on at all. And obviously, he went in the squad, so I'm happy with that decision. Ndiaye came on, 6-pointer. As I said, got the assist for the Idrissa Gana Gueye goal. A beautiful layoff. Gana Gueye, brilliant finish. But more importantly, DEFCON again. Ndiaye's, let's say, floor as an FPL asset is very high. And I know a lot of people are on a wildcard this week. Ndiaye has to be a must. Like, I genuinely think, after Erling Haaland, he's probably the most important player in FPL. That's just my opinion. I think he's a phenomenal FPL asset. And then a Bruno Fernandes 10-pointer. Again, listen, no complaints in it. No complaints. Finally got his open play goal. And as I said, Bruno Fernandes is just a brilliant FPL asset. You know he's pretty much guaranteed 90 minutes every game. He's on penalties, multiple routes to points to set pieces, corners. What's not to like? And I'll be honest, like, Chelsea will probably, let's say, I'm not going to say lucky because obviously it was a silly red card from Casemiro, but as soon as they went 10v10, Chelsea were the better side. But when it was 11v10, you really saw Bruno Fernandes progress higher up. Casemiro was pretty much alone in midfield. And Bruno Fernandes was pretty much playing as a 10. And United were all over Chelsea. So I do feel like the red card, let's say, hindered potentially more Bruno Fernandes points. But a 10-pointer against Chelsea, I'm not going to complain. Let's look at the attack. And let's get onto the attack. And I'll be honest, this was 2 pieces of rubbish again. João Pedro probably expected considering how early Chelsea got that red card. Let's say, Enzo Maresca, he set up after they went, let's say, 11v10 was a bit weird in terms of obviously Palmer had to come off with the injury. But taking off someone like Canetta, for example, who I think is a brilliant at carrying the ball, stretching defense, especially when you're down to 10 men, you want the energy in that team. And I feel like taking him off wasn't a decision I agreed with. Obviously, it didn't help, let's say, João Pedro from an FPL point of view, because there was a lot of times that he got the ball and was just isolated in attack. So obviously, it was frustrating owning João Pedro. He did get 90 minutes again, but listen, I do feel like that was, again, game state dependent. Watkins, on the other hand, absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. I don't even want to talk about him. I'll be honest. Like, he's frustrated me so much so far in FPL. Again, Aston Villa as a team, shocking. Finally got their first goal of the season, so well done to them with Matty Cash. But again, like, there's just nothing. He didn't start Harvey Elliott again. Jadon Sancho didn't start. And Jadon Sancho, when he's come on again for Aston Villa, has just given them a bit, let's say, something different. And I'm not Jadon Sancho's biggest fan, but Aston Villa clearly lack a lot in the attack. And for example, like Morgan Rogers, when you've watched him so far this year, absolutely shocking from Aston Villa. So I don't know how Unai Emery feels. I think his team selection has to be better in terms of he's still picking, for example, John McGinn. The attacking dynamics of the Aston Villa team have to change, but let's see what happens. But more importantly, let's get into my team plans because I have changed my thinking. So in Game Week 6, I will be activating a chip, and that is going to be my triple captain chip. I'm not going to play my wild card. I'm going to stick to my original plan, which was a triple captain chip in Game Week 6, wild card in Game Week 8. So looking at the transfers that I'm going to make is pretty much for a 2-week, let's say, period, which is Game Week 6 and Game Week 7. So again, the obvious move this week is going to be Ollie Watkins out, which I'm going to do anyway. Erling Haaland in. Erling Haaland's going to be my triple captain. And then to fund that, I'm going to move Mo Salah down. So my original plan was to go from Mo Salah to Semenyo. Semenyo, obviously a brilliant fixture against Leeds away. But I think right now I am slightly leaning towards Phil Foden. And the reason I'm going with Phil Foden is, again, Game Week 6, Game Week 7 is the period that I'm looking at. Game Week 6, Phil Foden has Burnley. Game Week 7, he has Brentford. Brentford is a game, or let's say a team that he's had a lot of joy in the past. For example, the season that he got PFA Player of the Year, Phil Foden scored a hat-trick against Brentford. So we know, let's say Phil Foden can go big. We've seen it in the past. We also know he has that explosive potential in terms of returns. Also, Man City, the last couple of games have, let's say, clicked as a team. We've seen it in the Champions League against Napoli as well, where Phil Foden also did get a return. And I just don't think, let's say, City have the options to rotate Phil Foden out over the next couple of weeks. And I feel like, listen, Phil Foden has Burnley and Brentford. Could he outscore Semenyo, who has Leeds away and Fulham at home? I think the answer is yes. And also, another thing with Phil Foden is, if I do bring him in, a lot of people are going to play their wild card in game week 6, for example, are going to have Reinders. So they're going to have Reinders and Haaland. If I go with Phil Foden, I'm still going to have, let's say, 2 City midfielders / attackers, which I do like. But then, the case that I also have is 2 free transfers going after this, because I thought going into this week. So then, I'm thinking, I still have the option of going Gakpo to a Semenyo, which does leave my team in a very, very solid position for game week 6. And I feel like if you're looking at that defense, I think could outscore a lot of, let's say, wildcard team defenses. That midfield, I'm very, very happy with. I don't think on a wildcard it will look, let's say, much different. The attack, again, massive, massive positive, and I'm going to play my triple captain chip. Game week 7, then, this is how my team will look. Probably would play, let's say, Richards rather than a Murillo against Newcastle. Again, Semenyo would have Fulham. I would have 2 free transfers going into this week. My initial plan was going Cucurella to Gabriel, which I probably still would do, to be honest. But I was also going to Joao Pedro's Gyökeres against West Ham. I think I've changed my mind on that, is because even though I do see the upside of Gyökeres again in game week 7 against, let's say, a West Ham who are poor, and there's been reports that Graham Potter after game week 7 during the international break is going to get sacked, which, if that's the case, listen, like, you probably do want to target that fixture. But at the same time, I bought Joao Pedro when he was 7.5. He's currently 7.8. If I sell him now, it'll be 7.6. So I will lose out on 0.2 million, especially on a wild card in game week 8. I'm not too sure if I would want to lose that, let's say, 0.2 million. Like, my team values, let's say, is decent, but again, it's not brilliant. Like, I don't want to lose any more, especially, for example, Semenyo, when people could have bought him in, was 7 million. Now he's 7.7. He's risen like crazy, by the way. So that's something I thought about. But this week, game week 7, again, Cucurella will definitely go, and Gabriel will come in, just because I want to target, let's say, West Ham defensive, like, frailty, especially on corners. And I feel like that's not a bad, let's say, team for game week 7 before I do activate my wildcard in game week 8. Something I've also thought about is, in that Phil Foden spot, I can obviously afford Bukayo Saka. The only problem is Bukayo Saka in game week 6 has Newcastle. I'm not too sure if that's a fixture I want to target, even though the game week 7 fixture is brilliant. There's obviously reports that Noni Madueke might have done his ACL. So Saka's minutes do look, let's say, very secure. But at the same time, I'm not too sure if I want to take that risk. And obviously, Saka don't have penalties, so he's lost, let's say, a route to points that he had last year. But I think, listen, Phil Foden's upside over the next coming weeks is very high. It's something that I feel like I can take the risk, just because I'm, let's say, being quite pragmatic in my approach to FPL so far this season. And again, another option I do have, by the way, is Bryan Mbeumo. I'm not too sure if I want to double up on that United midfield. Brentford and Sunderland game 6 and 7. They are 2 good fixtures. Bryan Mbeumo, when you've watched Manchester United, has looked quite bright. But again, I feel like that could be slightly risky. I feel like I see the upside with Phil Foden a bit higher. So that's the moves I'm probably going to make. But let's see. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys like the video, comment your thoughts on my team, subscribe to the channel, and we will be back soon.